All right. And we're live, guys. All right. Hey, guys, I'm Ryan McGuire. I'm from Third Coast Grappling. We're here for another edition of Third Coast Grappling Radio. I'm joined by my host, Zach Marshall, and Mr. Garry Tonon. I think it's Grithy Garrett. Grithy Garrett. I think that's what we're going to go with. And then we got the man, Jake Shields, up there on the top right. How you guys doing?
Doing all right. I think we're all kind of over these quarantines. I'm sure you guys too.
Yeah. Looks like everybody's got beard game's pretty strong except Ryan's.
I got kind of like Gary's too.
I got heckled like mercilessly for my neck beard, so I had to trim the neck beard down a little bit. So but I don't know.
I trimmed the beard, but I am not bold enough to trim my own hair. So, and Jeff Chu has been cutting the most people's hair, and I'm just not comfortable with that. There's just no chance I'm letting that happen.
Oh man, that's awesome. So how things been going, Garry? Everything going good down there in y'all's neck of the woods, or is it just?
Just chaos. Yeah, man. I mean, it's all right. There's nothing really going on. Just more like on social media than anything else. It's craziness, but
it's been interesting. I think we all lost our minds, and the country got locked down at the same time, and then the world just imploded. So it was like a perfect recipe. Everybody was angry; they were locked inside. Everybody was angry about something. So.
Sure.
Okay, right. Took it to Facebook. But so I guess we'll get started with Garry, I wanted to ask you, so I was going back through some stuff. You won worlds at blue belt in the gi as juvenile.
Yeah. That was probably like the first thing I ever did of note, I guess. But that was the first thing I ever did of note. But that was probably the summation of my like accomplishments in the gi. I don't really think I won anything at like a world-class level after that in the gi. I pretty much just started gravitating over to no gi.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that you had that big of a foundation in the gi. I did some history, Tom DeBlas and then Ricardo Almeida, and then, moving over primarily to Donners afterwards. That was interesting to hear. Do you think that having that gi foundation has helped you be more complete jiu-jitsu athlete, ever since, having that, or rather than just being the pure no-gi athlete, as you'll see some of the guys coming out these days?
I mean, I'm not like upset that I ended up training in the gi first or anything like that. I don't think it like necessarily hindered my progress. I don't really feel like in any marked way, like the stuff that I learned in the gi, like somehow helped me without the gi. It's just a different sport to me, man. A different set of problems. And I enjoy training in the gi on some level. Like it was fun for me, but it wasn't the same competitive experience. And I was just naturally better without the gi. So obviously you're going to gravitate towards what you're good at. So I kind of just tended to prefer that. And, now looking back and looking at the climate of things today, like the no-gi stuff seems to be promoted a little bit more, seems to be a little bit more exciting. So I'm happy I ended up on that end of things instead of the gi, especially because I'm doing MMA.
I mean, you're a big reason why. I mean, no gis that took off the way it was. I mean, your success at EBI, and then the things you've done in submission grappling. So, I mean, hats off to you, man. That's been.
You still teach classes in the gi pretty consistently, right?
Well, not right now, but back then, yeah. Up until I first started doing MMA, I was teaching at my school like 7 days a week, pretty much 6 days a week, and I was teaching a decent number of gi classes. Now I'm trying to think. I maybe teach. Still teach 5-6 days a week at my gym, but I maybe only teach like one gi class. The gi classes are covered by other instructors now, for the most part. But I'm highly interested in it still as a sport. It's just I don't have the time to dedicate to that. Like I got still doing just as much jiu-jitsu as I used to, and on top of that, I got to learn how to fucking punch people in the face. So.
That's a tough balance. The balancing a business owner, two an instructor and a coach to many different students, and then also needing to develop your own skills to further your career. Something's got to sacrifice because before you're getting really into the competition side, you can focus more on your students and their business, but something's got to give whenever you want to go to the next level in your athletic pursuit, right?
Yeah, definitely. When I started doing MMA, I realized that much more so than any other time. And I started to learn how to delegate responsibilities because that's always been hard for me. When I started the business, I pretty much did everything on my own whether it came to cleaning, whether it came to teaching, whatever it is. And I started to realize it just wasn't going to be possible if I was going to have those other goals. And yeah, man, I made it work, and I still have the school. I think everybody's relatively happy, and now it gives my instructors a chance to learn how to teach and stuff. So it's a good opportunity for them as well. So
Awesome.
I'm happy with the way things went, man, and I'm excited for the rest of the MMA career for sure.
Awesome. Well, Jake, I got a question for you. So I was doing a little background. So you started training with Chuck Liddell, like right off the bat?
Yeah, that's who I first met and started training with. It was like it was before he was like known in the town as a tough guy, but he wasn't really famous yet. And it was really cool meeting him early on and getting started with him.
That's crazy, man. So, I mean, those early days, I mean, what were those like? I mean, you came in from being a pretty hot shit wrestler coming into MMA. Was it just kind of how was that transition for you coming just strictly from wrestling, crossing over to the MMA kind of in those formative years?
It was a lot different back then because obviously the sport was newer. So a lot of guys weren't doing multiple martial arts. So it was a little bit easier coming in, but it was still tough because the sport was pretty unregulated. And it was just cool times because everyone that did it was super serious and really wanted to fight. We had to go out and do Indian reservations, and it was a cool time. So
we might have to get back to that soon, Jake.
Yeah, no kidding.
The mic's off. I can't really hear Gary, so I'm kind of out of part of the conversation. I don't think we.
Oh shit.
He said we might be back to that here pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. Might start doing underground fights.
Man, like the UFC almost went and did it at that Indian casino for UFC 249. Where was that at?
Yeah, Gavin Newsom went and shut that down. That was one of the places where we used to fight back in the day. But our good.
Is that where the one where they would let like the soccer moms get in there with like the trained killers and get with that viral video that went from California?
Oh my God, that shit was wild.
They let the soccer mom get in there and then she just got her ass pieced up, and then that I think that was the same place. I can't remember the name of that the promotion in California, but fuck.
Yeah, it was Tahachi Palace, so it might have been because they definitely do those there. I'm not sure if I'm talking about, but it's definitely possible.
I wish they had those in Texas.
Gary, have you heard anything from One on when they're thinking about the first event?
Man, they haven't spoken to me yet, but I'll say this.
Is there any way Gary's mic is off of mine? Is there a way to get that on?
Let me see real quick. Like Gary,
follow the whole conversation because I can't hear anything Gary says.
Do you have any headphones where you can plug it in? So it's only Gary that's out.
It's only Gary, so I hear both of you guys fine, but for some reason I can't hear anything Gary says.
Let me see.
I've just been reading his lips the whole time.
Yeah, so I'm missing like part of the conversation. It's a little tricky, but I just see Gary with his hair out there. That's about it.
Can you?
Let me see that. All right, 1 second. All right.
Can you hear me now, Jake?
Hey.
Test 1 2 test. Can you hear me?
No luck, Jake. Let me see. Take Jake out. I don't know. His connection was kind of shoddy. Is that any better?
Hello. Can you hear me now, Jake?
Hello.
Can you hear me, Jake?
All right. Yeah, now I can hear the conversation. I don't
there we go. Where were we?
That was weird.
I can see Gary talking. I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, we were just talking about soccer moms getting pieced up on an Indian reservation. No big deal.
I remember I went to a fight one time, one of the Indian reservations. They actually had a dude fought some big fat chick, some little skinny guy. At first, it was like exciting because the chick was like way bigger, and then she just got knocked out, and you're kind of like, "Wow, I can't believe we're watching this."
Yeah, we might take that idea for one of our next shows.
No, I don't need any more bullshit. They'll put my big ass in there.
Like Gary, you're about to say something about One. That.
Oh, you were asking if One was thinking. So listen, I haven't heard anything directly from One about anything like in terms of like when they're going to get started up. But this is the way I see it. Like the country's borders that we would be fighting in are all closed still. So until they can't even plan a show until the country's borders open back up, right?
Yeah.
At least for like people like me that are coming from other countries to compete. Like, I mean, I guess they could hold a show like in Thailand with a bunch of Thai fighters. You know what I mean? But they couldn't hold. They would never be able to fly me in because the country's borders closed. So until that problem gets solved, I wouldn't even think they'd be able to plan a card. So the way I see it, I don't see them operating for at least another 6 months. But yeah, I mean, nobody's told me that. But it's like you have to think like it takes a while to plan a card, right? And they can't even do that until the country's borders open. So it's just, I don't know, man. It's hard for me to imagine. I mean, maybe 4 months from now would be the earliest. Like if I'm being real generous with how early maybe they could have a fight, but if I'm being realistic, I don't see it until
Especially
6 months.
You have to fly international people, and
nobody
wants to waste money paying for all these tickets ahead of time too for an event that ends up not being able to. There's a lot of upfront costs for running a promotion. So
Yeah.
I can only imagine like one of their size too, bringing in everybody from all over. So, but hopefully you had that big title shot push, Gary, online, that social media push where people, I think we lost Jake. Jake will be back. I have no doubt Jake will be back, but you had that big push for the title shot. Were they going to give you the shot? I mean, if everything was going to go ahead, you had the shot, right? And then they pulled the card, or what was going on with that?
Yeah. So, they were in talks about it when we were planning my last fight, and then they decided not to do it. They decided to give me a different opponent. They were going to give me a guy that was like 12-0, and here we go. We got Jake back again.
Sorry, I'm back.
Sorry, bro. We lost Jake's audio. At least I lost Jake's audio.
Oh,
there you go. I think Jake's phone has coronavirus.
Oh, I got him. I got his audio now.
Yes, it's tough when you can't hear. It throws it all off.
Yeah. It sounded like you were underwater at first, but
Corona Verizon.
But yeah, man. So they ended up changing it to another fight. So they wanted him to be 12-0. So I mean, that was my question. Is Gary, like, I'm sure you could have had your pick of the litter of U.S. promotions. You could have did Dana White's Contenders. You could have probably went straight to the UFC if you wanted to, with being under just on your own credentials. Did you just go over to Asia purely for the money grab, or is it just more to build up a more global, or do you just have a good following there from your connection from going back and forth?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think I would say that they pay me well, but I wouldn't say it's like I'm getting paid like drastically more than I would be if I was fighting in Bellator or UFC. Maybe a little bit more than maybe if I would have started in the UFC probably. But like, I don't know, man. It was more along the lines of, number one, they were like the first people to reach out to me. So it just became like really comfortable. And then like, it's like you get to know people and you just feel more comfortable like striking deals with them. Like when you don't know somebody, it's like, and like all I hear is bad shit from other people about all different kinds of organizations. It's not like anybody's talking any of these organizations up, right? So number one, they were the only people that were really conversing with me. And then number two, I would just say that I was a little bit more confident after I did get to know them in their ability to get me fights quickly. And I was a little worried that I was going to kind of get like put on the back burner in one of these other organizations, or even just like fed to the wolves within like my second or third fight. And I did have no amateur career. So it's like I needed to feel confident that whoever I was working with was going to actually help me progress and not just like, have me fighting like, the toughest guy in the world, like, fight number 3 or 4.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Too. Your success in one, I think, with already your backing from jiu-jitsu, and your success in one has, I think, like elevated you a little bit more. Where if you went to maybe sit the UFC, you'd still just be in the middle of the pack or not really known, just because there's so much talent there. It's hard to shine, right?
Sure. And then best case scenario, like let's say I had won the same amount of fights in a row that I won in the UFC in one, right? I would be fighting like the who's 45-pound champ right now?
Where in the UFC?
Yeah.
Jacob.
Volkanovski, right? Jacob Volkanovski. Yeah.
How many fights do you think that guy has? I don't know.
I think it's like 9 or 10. He doesn't have that many fights.
Oh, okay. All right,
so those guys have a ton of fights though.
That might be a bad example, but most guys that are the champion would probably have like 20 fights plus 10 amateur fights. Guys like Khabib have like 30 fights plus however many amateur fights plus how many Sambo fights, and then it would be me like, hey, here I'm the challenger with like 8 fights in a row or something.
No, you're right. Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah, Volkanovski had 21 fights or 21 wins so far. So
man.
Yeah. No,
so I'm
going to say with the name Volkanovski has a lot of fights.
To get thrown into that mix so early just seems crazy to me. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit too much too soon. I don't know. I want to try to have a long lasting, effective career. MMA is not jiu-jitsu where you can lose and it's no big deal. Like you lose sometimes in MMA and your face gets fucking wiped off the map and you have to win fucking 4 fights again before you're back to where you were before.
And if you notice too,
or they get their skulls cracked, it could be pretty.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. If you notice too, like before it was all the BJJ guys went into MMA, And now you're seeing a lot of MMA guys start to do jiu-jitsu tournaments, probably because they're going down to their Jake Shields with Cub Swanson, right? Like you got more MMA guys now maybe seeing that, their UFC career, their MMA career might run short, and the only way to continue to compete after that is BJJ. So
No,
it's
what-
like
no, what-
I think a lot of the
what
MMA
they
guys
say-
do MMA is like
Go
so
ahead,
serious and hardcore. They're doing it more for more for fun, and it's a good way to stay competitive after you've been fighting, because fighting is a really stressful sport. As Gary's learning, you after you do jiu-jitsu, you switch MMA, you're like, man, this is a lot harder. So if you go from MMA to jiu-jitsu,
and who doesn't want
this is fun, no stress.
And who doesn't want 20K to get heel hooked by Gordon Ryan? I mean, come
Well,
on.
yeah. Tell that to
If
Cubs.
you get paid,
come
it's
on.
a lot less stressful.
Tell that to Cubs knee, right?
Yeah, that was a bad example, but that was.
But no, I mean, you didn't do anything wrong there at all. Like I think he even admitted, like he reaped himself almost by,
I think it was the rule set, because they had no hill hooks, but they didn't have no reaping. So I had that position, but I wasn't out to hill hook him. So he didn't realize the danger he was in. So it was one of those rule sets. They should allow hill hooks, and the problem wouldn't be there.
Yeah, we take them out, but we say no reaping. So
the danger of going from MMA to jiu-jitsu now, because jiu-jitsu's changed, or what is a focus in jiu-jitsu has changed a lot more to the leg locks, thanks to the Garry Tonons of the world, and now you can't go from UFC down to where you grew up, because now you're just going to get wrecked.
Pretty much.
Unless you're Ryan Hall.
So Jake, I saw something too. So you won your first big jiu-jitsu tournament was in the gi as well? Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
These guys.
That was the only time I ever competed in the gi, actually. I didn't really train much with the gi, but I was a purple belt, and everyone, like a lot of the Brazilians back then, would be like, "Oh, you're not a real purple belt." So I kind of just did the Pan Ams I went and won that pretty easy, and after that, I guess I'm a purple belt.
That's pretty badass.
So I just did that to piss off the Brazilians. The only reason I ever put on a gi, but
I love it. So Jake Shields was American Jiu-Jitsu before Keenan was talking American Jiu-Jitsu. Whenever
Sure.
I would watch Elite XC, Strike Force, all that. So I mean, what's the difference here? I mean, do you think it's more of an ideology? Garry Tonon's out American Jiu-Jitsu, Jake Shields American Jiu-Jitsu. Is it just that blending of wrestling and
We just had Bill Cooper and
Jeff on? They were talking
and Jeff Glover on too.
So what do you think?
I think I think the original person that dubbed it. I originally did it just kind of half messing around to piss off Brazilians, but then basically I think the American style, a lot of us we really blend in wrestling and jiu-jitsu. It is and I never really trained with a gi, and because back in the day they'd be like, "Oh, you don't train gi, and you don't train jiu-jitsu." So I was like, "All right, do American jiu-jitsu," and to me it was kind of the style of mixing the two. But I think at this point there's enough top Americans. It's kind of a hard thing. I think I'm the first guy that started using it, but it's hard to say that I can own something when there's so mmany top American grapplers now.
Yeah, for sure. But
yeah, I definitely think Jake was one of the first people to springboard that idea, though. I think for a market period of time, in the jiu-jitsu world, I remember when I was first coming up, people looked at Brazilians as the only people that were going to be able to be successful in jiu-jitsu tournaments. And they were somehow, just by being Brazilian, you were already at a higher level. Right. And I think part of the idea of American jiu-jitsu too is breaking some of those stereotypes that they had set from the very beginning. Hey, you have to train in a gi, you have to win something to be good, and this sort of thing. And we started to kind of challenge some of those things, those ideologies that they were stating, and still broke free and became successful. And the other thing I would say is we kind of broke past those stereotypes of kind of how you have to carry yourself as a martial artist as well, where you have to be this Zen monk sort of individual.
Bowing.
I think guys like Jake changed that as well.
Yeah, Brazilians
slapping people in the mouth
weren't like that.
But so Jake,
I've never bowed to anybody.
So when you fought Robbie Lawler, I mean, what the Robbie Lawler then? How would you compare him to the Robbie Lawler that maybe fought Rory McDonald? I mean, did he still have that crazy dog in him, and he's just a little bit more skilled when he got into the UFC and went on that title run, or what was? Because man, he looked. I watched that fight again, and he was doing his thing, and then it just he forgot how to defend a guillotine or something.
Yeah, man, Lawler's always dangerous. He always has hit hard. He's had ups and downs in his career, but he's never been he's never been a bad fighter. He's always been a guy with knockout punch. He always comes in hard, but he also has the whole of he doesn't have great jiu-jitsu defense. So that's always been his weakness. His strengths have always been the same. His weaknesses have always been the same.
Yeah.
There's probably been some time periods when he's been slightly better than others, but he's always been tough.
Yeah, you guys gotta look at like, you know, submissions in jiu-jitsu the same way that you look at a knockout punch, right? Like, so it's not like Lawler just made a mistake. It's like, you know, Jake has submissions, and it's the same way that somebody gets caught with a fucking overhand. Like that dude got caught in a guillotine, and you know, you fucking put him out. It is what it is.
Yeah. Like Jake, watching your run and like elite, like Strike Force, and then in the UFC, like your style and just your grinding pressure would just piss everybody off. It was like the ultimate troll back then. Like Jake Shields was gonna fight and he was gonna fucking win and he was gonna piss everybody off at the
take
same
him down.
time.
And
I loved it, dude. I had to feel it firsthand when you were in Houston.
I was gonna do, but they couldn't stop it.
It was just like non-fucking stop. And then that GSP fight, man. I mean, you took rounds off. You know, potentially the greatest all time in MMA. I mean, that was definitely fucking incredible, man. I mean, you've
definitely a tough fight. GSP's, you know, definitely one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. So that was quite an honor fighting with him.
What was the prep like for him? I mean, you train with those guys now over there, you know, with Donaher guys and all them. So have you done a fight camp under John, or have you only done like jiu-jitsu prep and stuff like that?
More just jiu-jitsu. I was kind of more focused on jiu-jitsu by the time I went over there. I think I did 1 or 2 fights, but I was focusing more jiu-jitsu. But you know, like this point, I've fought too many years. I'm kind of over it. But John's a great coach for MMA as well. That's, you know, watching working with Garry and stuff. He really understands. He really understands the striking game too, which you wouldn't expect it because he's known as a world-class jiu-jitsu coach. But you watch him with striking, kickboxing, boxing. Like he knows all aspects of the martial arts game.
And that's what I was going to ask.
As well. Pretty crazy.
I was going to ask Garry. So, what's the difference between a John Donaher prepping you for a jiu-jitsu match? I mean, besides the obvious, and prepping you for an MMA fight. Is there a mindset shift, or is it just more or less just techniques and just getting the game plan in place? Like
I think at the beginning, like I don't think John really realized how serious I was about the idea of getting into MMA. I think maybe he like was kind of shrugging it off as like me maybe just like saying I like wanted to fight, and like maybe he just kind of thought it like was never going to happen. And then one day I came to John, I was like, yeah, you know, like I signed with one, and you know, I'm probably gonna have a fight at like this time. And John was just like, okay, like we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I feel like when Garry first started doing MMA, John was just like trying to make him quit. Every single day, 5 rounds with guys bigger than you, with tons of experience.
100%.
Going back, and finally, John's like, all right.
How did you initially get involved with John? We know like Gordon's story of he came through you to John, but how did you first get involved?
So first off, to comment on what Jake just said with John trying to make me quit. One of the ways he tried to make me quit was pairing me up with Jake during sparring rounds, like literally every day, fucking 3 5-minute rounds for like fucking 3 weeks, dude.
How you get better?
It was just me and Jake.
This was like his first week sparring. I'm like, what is John doing? He's trying to get Garry to quit. I think he started going a little easier on him.
You just learned striking, huh? All right, here we go.
But so I started to get work with John because Frankie Edgar was doing one of his camps, and I guess a lot of the pro MMA guys would come up to learn jiu-jitsu from John on Mondays. So Frankie was going up there like I would say like twice a week. I forget which fight it was that he was preparing for. I didn't really remember, but I don't remember if he invited me or if I like kind of invited myself to training. But I was kind of like, hey, Frankie, like, can you take me up there, you know? Because I was really young at the time. I was probably like 18 or something. And so I would go up there a couple times a week here and there. And like, you know, I got to learn from John a little bit, but it wasn't consistent. And then when I moved to Rutgers to go to school, I think I was like 19. Then I was a lot closer to the city. I was kind of in the middle of everything. I wasn't really like close enough to train with Tom anymore. I would pop into Ricardo's here and there. I would pop into Henzo's here and there. And then I would train at this Academy Brunswick that I now own. And I just started going to more classes that happened to be John classes because I could only attend in the afternoon. All my like school classes at Rutgers were at night. And then eventually I met Eddie Cummings. He brought me to morning sessions. So I was training like multiple times per day under John. And then I started to bring Gordon, etc. So it was like over time, I started to develop a relationship with him. I think like the first time we started to get close and like really had like a student coach relationship was when he invited me to do the Nick Diaz camp with George. And that was like the first time like I really got acclimated with John, and like I knew anything about him as a person. Before that, like he would just teach, and then like I never had a single conversation with him. I was actually terrified of John. He was like the scariest person ever for me. Like I just wouldn't go anywhere near him. After he was done teaching, I would just like hide in the corner and like peek and like watch him train with Brian Glick.
Very intimidating.
And I felt like the biggest peon when he was here for the Bo Nickel Gordon Ryan fight. And I had to sit there, and me and Zach had to do like a rules meeting with John and like these Olympic level coaches and Gordon, and then we're just like some shitty purple belt hobbyists.
Well, he went on for 15 minutes on what the definition of stalling is in jiu-jitsu.
like the guy was
literally 15 minutes, and then afterwards, Bo was like, "Okay, yeah, got it." He goes to his coach. He goes, "What the fuck was that guy just saying?" Like,
they still didn't have any clue, but it was like the guy was like, "All right, so let's sit down." I was like, "All right, so here." And then the guy asked a question. I'm like, you know what? What, John, how about you just answer it? I just sat back and just enjoyed the lesson. I'm like, how the fuck am I going to sit here and like tell these guys that legend?
Pretty much every time we did the Eddie Bravo Invitational, so every time we did EBI, for whatever reason, I'm not really sure, but Eddie Bravo would basically have us all meet in the back, and we would do a rules meeting. But what would happen is the rules for EBI would change every single time we did EBI, and John would be there, and it would be the same thing. Like Eddie would like somebody would ask a question, and Eddie would just be like, "John, why don't you answer that?" Like,
man, it's just smart. Like I was like, I felt so like useless. I was like, yeah, just let John handle this one. But man, I was the same way, man. The first time I was just super intimidated. I was like, I'm gonna shake his hand, be real nice, and go about my way.
Yeah.
but he has that energy about him, man. I know what you mean. Like a lot of these guys, like Draculino, my professor, like he has that same kind of charismatic energy that just draws people to him, man. It's just, I don't know. I've only met very few people like him, so it's pretty special. But so Gary, what's up next? I mean, so I was gonna ask you like about your cardio and how do you maintain your pace? Do you do anything special, or do you just do a lot of rounds? Because like that pace with Davi Ramos and basically all your matches is fucking like super.
That ADCC with Kanatu, that pace there was insane.
Yeah. I just get the shit beat out of me by Jake. That's how I focus on my cardio. It's pretty effective. But no, man. I mean, I've always been a huge believer like this idea of cardio that people have in their heads has a lot less to do with actual like physical conditioning. Like all of us are athletes like that are competing at the highest level for the most part. We're all in shape. Like there's nothing new about what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like we're doing jiu-jitsu, right? And I feel like the people that are most equipped to like keep a high pace are the people that keep a high pace in training. So like if I train that way, I can compete that way. If I don't train that way and then I go to compete that way, that's exhausting. Right. Mm-hmm. So if I'm the one that controls the pace and that pace is the pace that I have in training, it's all good. You know, like I feel relaxed and I feel good and I'm the one in control. The moment somebody takes you outside your comfort zone, that's the scary part, you know?
Like Jake, I got to train with Jake when he was in town for the Homolo fight. And what you just
said.
I'm
sorry. I'm so sorry.
Terrible. Like he killed you like 10 seconds in. And then it was like head and arm choke. And then I think you finished that match at Submission Underground with the fucking head and arm choke as well or whatever. Like the next
week. Throwing bags of concrete on somebody. They're just like, I'm stuck.
I couldn't. It was the worst thing.
When you're controlling the pace, it's hard. You know, someone else controlling the pace on you, you get a lot more tired. So it's also the more technical you are.
Because then, like, I go from Jake and into Gordon, and Gordon is like, I mean, he could grapple with a baby. He's so like technical and gentle, you know. Like it was like going from like getting bulldozed to like somebody just fucking like flick.
Gordon's not always gentle and nice. So time.
Yeah, you got a special treatment, my friend.
I saw the not so nice when him and Brian Cushing, the NFL guy, they got to do a little training, man. I was like, because Brian's probably the biggest guy I've ever seen in my life. He's like 6'7", 6'8", like 280, 290. And fucking Gordon, the Jersey boy, like, dude, he just fucking did just like nothing. And I was like, all right, jiu-jitsu, like, yeah, I don't need any more convincing. Because Gordon just took his bag just over and over and over and over again, man, just like nonstop. I don't know, super talented guy.
So Gordon or Gary, you know, there's been multiple times the higher level you get and the bigger your team gets, of course, the more things are going to happen where you have to fight teammates. And you know, sure. Eddie Cummings during EBI, Gordon during ADCC. What kind of mindset do you have going in and going up against one of your teammates?
Oh, a student, like direct student.
Or
Like,
even a student, yeah.
It's pretty similar to like whatever we would do in training. I take like, especially now with Gordon being so much bigger and stronger than me, like I take it like training super serious. Like most of the time when I'm training with Gordon, I try to give him my all. We don't train as much as we used to anymore because he's much bigger than me. So like it makes more sense for him to train with athletes his size. But when we do, I try to give him the best look I possibly can. And also there's always, of course, a little ego involved, because I was his coach at one point, and yeah, so I just do the best I can, and it's the same thing when we're competing. So I don't really, it doesn't bother me that much. It's not that weird. I think I think it would be weird if we fought, like in MMA. MMA is so different. That's different. But jiu-jitsu is like, at the end of the day, like we're probably going to be okay afterwards. Like, I guess somebody
Eddie Cummings. Yeah, with you and Eddie Cummings, it's like you guys almost do each other's tricks, so it even makes it harder to get them because you guys train so much that he already knows what your special moves are going to be or what you're going to do in certain position.
Yeah. And Eddie made a point about that. We had Eddie and Draculino last night, and Eddie was talking about, he hated it when teammates would end up, getting to the end and then closing out, so that's why he created EBIOT the way he did, so that if teammates did fight, that, there would always be a definitive winner, that they couldn't game it. You know what I mean? Like your teammate couldn't just, I don't know. I guess there could be an agreement in place, but he said that he kind of built those rules in place to kind of keep it from, teammates meeting and then doing the whole thing. You and Gordon went at each other's throat at ADCC. I mean, I don't think there was much holding back.
That's your absolute. That's going to happen. That is the potential to happen when you have two teammates going in the absolute, right? So
yeah,
you go in prepared that could happen, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jake, I was going to ask you. So back in the day, the Paul Harris fight, like that, I remember watching that, and I was just so fucking mad, man, because it was like he got kicked out of the UFC, I think, and then he was down there. And
everybody's fought Paul Harris, huh?
And he was just gouging the. I guess walk me through that whole match, man. I want to just hear that. I want to hear that story.
Yes, without a doubt, the most frustrating fight I've been in, because I was dominating the first couple rounds. I had him mounted. I think once I started beating him up, he started. First, he wasn't being that dirty. The fight was going pretty normal, but then I think I don't know if it was the second or third round, had him mount and started punching him. And that's when he started taking his thumbs. A lot of people think he was taking his fingers to scratch my eyes, but he was actually taking his thumbs and trying to gouge my eyes out. And the worst part was I kept yelling at the referee, and the referee kept being like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it." Dude, my eyes were getting like gouged out. I think it was the fourth round. I probably shouldn't have answered because I shouldn't have came out because I couldn't see. But then when you're in fight, I'm stubborn. It's all you know is to keep fighting. But it was definitely a frustrating fight.
Man, like I still go back to those, and like for some reason it was like from that point on everybody wanted to like have their shot, like the grapplers at least. Like you had Gary's match with Paul Harris. What was that like, man? I mean,
that was a great match.
The size was wild. The size difference not only, but I mean just the wild card of fighting.
Sure. Well, I think two things happened. I think first off, like Paul Harris just became unable to fight like anywhere because basically he was like he had to resort to eventually just like fighting in like random Russian cards and shit because he kept fucking doing things like what he did to Jake and fucking, he kept being a fucking jerk off. So he really had nowhere else to compete but grappling. So that was one problem. And then the second thing is I think after I had my match with him, I think it removed a little bit of the fear from some people because the previous grappling matches guys got to watch Paul Harrison. He basically just brutally broke everybody's leg in fucking half. And then a little tiny guy managed to fucking survive and not only survive, but actually threaten him multiple times and put him in the same submission holds that he was being able to put other people in. And I think people were like, oh, all right, like maybe I could do that too. You know what I mean? Where for years, I mean, think about it. How many years had it been from his ADCC performance, his previous ADCC performance to his grappling match with me, where he did no other grappling in between? Like, it's not like anybody was asking for matches. You know what I mean? So it wasn't until then that he started competing.
Want to compete against him.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to compete against him until after I competed against him, I mean, Jake had the balls to do it. I had the balls to do it, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, man. I mean, and speaking
Not
of all,
everybody does it.
I mean, Jake, you came up, with Nate and Nick, the Cesar Gracie, doing a lot of your MMA camps. So what are some of those camps, like some of those legendary camps with those guys? I mean, is it as crazy as some of the stories that you hear out there, public stories and stuff, or is it even crazier? Like when you get behind the scenes?
Yeah, we used to train hard. Sport was different back then. We used to beat the hell out of each other every day. I don't know if it was the smartest thing, but we'd go. We're like great friends. We'd put it on and just spar hard pretty much every day, and it definitely got us tough. And luckily we're still doing all right. The way we beat the hell out of each other.
And so I see. Go ahead, Zach.
They talked. Jeff Glover talked about that yesterday. It's like if you look at all the best fighters and grapplers, they typically have somebody great that's on their team too, and they can build each other. They're talking about him and Bill Cooper. The only reason he was able to come up with shit like the donkey guard was because he had somebody that was really good, that was creative, that he could come up with stuff. And Gordon and Garry, and there's having good teammates definitely can elevate your game. Otherwise, you're just beating everybody. You're just the best in your school, and you're not getting any better, right?
And it makes it easier too when you have other people that are super serious. Like they got. They're in New York, they have a group of guys that are super serious. I was lucky with Nick and Nate, where you got these guys that every single day are down to train. They're going to be there year in, year out. You get a lot of guys, they train for a couple months and disappear. When you have the same set of guys you're training with year in, year out, every day, you really can start helping each other progress.
No, that's a big point. Like Garry, you the MMA team that you guys have up there at Renzo's, is there a lot of transients, or is it more of an exclusive thing that's kind of invite only when it comes to the sparring rounds and stuff like that?
We do some of our own thing, like sometimes on the weekends and stuff. We have like little private sessions where just a few of us meet up. But I would say during the week, like there's definitely some visitors and stuff that jump in to training, and the visitors like add to it as well. Like, when we have guys that, we don't know, it's always an interesting experiment, because you get to try out these things that you've been trying out on each other, which are like frustratingly difficult because we're all learning the same shit and we're all good at the same shit. So then like you go to try it on your teammate and it's like, fuck man, this is impossible. I can't fucking do this move. And then you try it on some visiting member of the academy and you're like, oh, actually this works. So it's not completely private. There's definitely still, people coming in from other places and things training. We've recently kind of tightened the doors a little bit because of that whole eye infection thing. Kind of got us to start tightening up a little bit because we kind of started to feel like people were bringing like staph infections and shit into the academy. And because they didn't train with us, they didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? So we kind of
bad rap,
yeah, we kind of vet the people that are coming in a little bit more than we used to. We definitely you have to go through a process where you talk to somebody and you have to know somebody to kind of train now instead of just randomly showing up to vacation at Renzo's,
That's what I mean.
It ended up almost like a tourist spot.
And now we'll be bringing the coronavirus. So.
Everybody had to stop it. Yeah.
It started there. But so all the transients coming in.
Patient zero.
So all the transients coming into Renzo's. So when everybody's like, "Oh man, the DDS guys are dirty. They got ringworm. They got fucking all these issues. Their dicks are gonna fall off." Like that's really like the diseases that were coming in, or the ringworm, and it's not really y'all's fault. It's just probably the amount of visitors that are coming in, and just people not taking care of their own personal hygiene.
It's really difficult being in a hub like New York because people are traveling in and out of there all the time for all sorts of different reasons. And if you do jujitsu and you're in New York, you're like, oh, where am I going to train? Renzo Gracie Academy or maybe Marcelo's. Like those are really the only two places you're thinking of to take a traincation for shit per se. And if you're there for a week and you have staph or you have ringworm or have whatever, you're going to be like, oh, well, this is my only chance. And you're going to fucking tape it up and you're going to come in to train. You know what I mean? So I think that's happened quite a bit over the years.
So there's these legendary stories of you guys driving far as fuck to go train at Renzo's. What was it a day like for you guys when y'all lived far away? What would it be like to get those days in? Give me the rundown.
Wake up at fucking 5:30, 6 in the morning, then drive an hour and a half, 2 hours into Renzo's to make the morning class, probably still late somehow, sitting in traffic all that time, and then we'd sleep on the mats, maybe nap a little bit in between or grab some food, and then show up for 12:30 class. And now I have the MMA training after that, But it's just a lot. And then I have my own school, so then I have to go back, and then I have to go teach at night. And then sometimes back early on, I was still training. I would train with my students after that too, after I was done teaching. After a while, I started accumulating injuries, and I wasn't able to train quite as much. So I pretty much stuck to training at Henzo's, and then I would just teach at my school. But yeah, man, it's a long fucking day.
Man, I mean, I've been around a lot of athletes, and seeing what Garry does is pretty crazy. Drive an hour and a half. He'll do 3 workouts in a row, then drive an hour and a half back and go and teach 2-3 classes. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's insane. My professor, Drac, he'll teach. He'll fly in from Abu Dhabi straight to the mat, start teaching. I think there's just something to be said that, if you're leading by example, if you have a student base, you obviously got to be the king that, you got to lead by example. And if they see you out there hustling, not making excuses, making shit happen, it's going to make them want to do the same. Right. That's kind of that's basic leadership. So Garry, what's up when this thing's over? You've been talking to any super fights, anything cool? Who was that called you out the other day? Said they wanted to fight you. Is you? I think Dorino said he wanted to fight you, is what I heard, or something like that.
Dorino's been chasing a match for a long time, I think. Sure, Canuto wants a rematch as well. A lot of people want rematches. I personally prefer to have new matches, stuff that's going to make people really. I'm sure people still want to see that stuff. Those are tough guys in the jiu-jitsu community. I personally believe that there's a good chance that the next thing that I do is a grappling match, just because like I told you, I just feel like in my organization, the likelihood of a fight happening ASAP is probably not. It's probably not likely. So, I could see grappling being on the plate a little bit earlier than my next MMA fight, but it's really hard to say one way or the other. I got to keep my ears open to the MMA organization as well. So it's always a little tricky because I got to clear it with those guys before I do any type of grappling. But man, there's a lot of people I'm interested in grappling. As far as new guys, I'd love to have Ryan Hall. I heard is interested in doing some grappling matches soon. So that's a big one that I've been lobbying for.
That'd be a really good one.
Yeah, man, there's a lot out there, but I have aspirations of grappling and trying to beat guys that are going to elevate my career, man. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I'm not just doing it to do it anymore. You know what I mean? I have MMA is my main focus. So
it made me like as young as you are, you're only 26, 27, right?
28.
28. At your age, when I was going and doing some more background on you, I knew I had I've followed you for a while, your career a little bit, but when I looked back, man, I did not realize you fought for everybody. Fight to Win, Metamoris. You've been around all this shit. So what have you seen that's been different? In your time in the sport, growing from a colored belt competing in these sort of super fight events to now, a seasoned black belt that can basically pick and choose where he wants to fight. Now I want to ask Jake the same question too.
Dude, everything's different. Everything's different. Basically, I used to say 5 years ago, but now it's probably 8 years ago. None of this shit existed. There's guys that can go out as blue belts now and get paid to compete. You could win a tournament as a blue belt, some fucking the best blue belt championship or whatever the fuck it is. And you can win $1,000 to fucking compete. And that just didn't exist when I was competing, man. You had to pay to compete everywhere. And they're if you wanted to make money to compete, you had to go to Grappler's Quest. You had to compete in the absolute division with a bunch of fucking killers that were all probably bigger than you, unless you were also a giant. And then maybe if you got through 4 or 5 matches of the absolute best that there was without the gi, then maybe you could win $1,000. And that would happen once every fucking 6 months.
Yeah, I remember I was so excited back in the day winning one of those $1,000 absolute Grappler's Quest things. I was so pumped. I was
yeah, man.
Sport. So it's great that
dude.
Blue belts can make that.
Jeff Glover was talking because I asked him and Bill Cooper came up big at Grappler's Quest too. So we were talking to them. What can you compare Grappler's Quest to now? Is there a Grappler's Quest-esque kind of tournament going around these days, or is that just one of a kind? Was just kind of first of its kind, and people just branched off of that idea?
I don't know. I think there's probably organizations that I guess you could consider them to be somewhat similar, but the way that they do absolutes and things, I feel like there's so much more opportunity now that everybody has money for different divisions and things, and it's I don't think there's anybody out there just only offering money for like an absolute division now. They usually do a pro tournament. There's a live stream. There's all these things like those Grapplers Quests where you won $1,000. Nobody was fucking watching. You were doing that Grapplers Quest for $1,000. You've beat those fucking 5 best of the guys in the world. And literally there's like 10 people in the stands that are your buddies. And like that's you're in a high school gymnasium and you fucking go home and you talk about this grappling shit that you did to all your friends that don't do grappling, and they were like, "Yeah, whatever, fag." Like
sounds about right. Sounds like I'm to fight.
Karate.
So I mean, yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like I just look back. So you think was Metamoris really the explosion that started the professional grappling, circuit? I mean, they had their issues at the end. I'm sure Halleck had great intentions the whole way. But I mean, was that kind of like what blew up the industry? People were like, "Well, Metamoris can do it, so let's basically try and copy them."
I would say definitely this new wave. There was a couple of shows kind of similar to that, like years before that didn't really last. I think there was something like Submission Underground that was similar, but then that was the first one of the new wave, and it definitely kicked us off. And I think it's great what we have going right now. Shows like yours,
sure, man.
Polaris. There's this ton of a Chael Sonnen show.
Yeah, Polaris is great.
Here's how I'm going to measure it for you guys as far as the first show that kicked it off. Remember the Lloyd Irvin Kumite thing that I did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you guys familiar? So the reason that I would consider that the beginning of this whole professional grappling thing is because that was the first grappling tournament that I ever did where I got laid because of it. So that's how I know for sure that was the beginning.
That was all worth it. No, dude, I watched some crazy fucking videos
at that point.
on Sherdog. On Sherdog, or I can't remember where the fuck it was. It might have been the Underground. You doing some battle at the beach or whatever, where you're just fucking wrestling a bunch of animals in the sand. Like what the fuck is that? Was that just like a Jersey thing that happened at Jersey Shore every year, or what? What was that?
They just do that every weekend in Jersey. That is a regular weekend in Jersey.
It's just not organized.
I had some friends that were doing a wrestling tournament on the beach. They used to work at a strength and conditioning facility with me. And, I heard they were doing the tournament, and I don't know. I just wanted to have a good time. I don't really care. I just want to go out there. I've always been a big fan of wrestling, and I just thought it was going to be a fun time. And it was, I would do it again. I have to be a little careful now with the MMA career of like doing stupid shit that's going to get me hurt, So maybe in retrospect, probably wasn't the smartest thing, but I had a good time.
That was entertaining, man.
Somebody on the face.
That was super entertaining, man, for sure. So Jake, you fought Homolo at our last event. There was, I mean, it was super close, man. Razor thin. I mean, he had that omoplata, but I know there was that overtime. So I think we owe you one back a little bit. It was super close. I mean, I even told you, I thought it could have went, either way, but we owe you one back. What are you looking for at this point in your career? Who are you wanting to face? Who you want to see?
Good question. I got to think about that and see who's actually competing and who's some big names. Maybe go against some other MMA guys. If it's some of the good ones. Damian Maia would be another cool match.
Yeah, Damian's he's saying that he wants it out, but I'm hearing he wants like between like 70 and 100K. Like that's what he's wanting. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Probably still 2 folks on MMA, so that might not be realistic yet.
Yeah,
that'll be when he kind of stops fighting.
That would be great seeing like a Damian Maia. Like I don't know. I've always wanted to see him. Who did he do like a MMA like kind of like super grappling like Jacare versus Damian Maia, like do a bunch of these guys, because I like it when it's MMA guys and MMA guys, but when it's like a Garry Tonon goes out there against a guy that's that's a bad example. Let's say Gordon goes and fights a pure MMA guy. Those matches are over in like 10, 15 seconds like that, right? I mean, that's why are they doing those type of matches? What's the like? What do you think's the big draw to those? Just to see the UFC athletes, or just show the big?
Yeah, I think they're doing it because it brings over the fight audience for some of these shows. If it brings over, they're trying to bring, especially Fight Pass doing a lot of those. They're trying to bring over the fight fans. Like Chael Sonnen has a lot of MMA guys on there, and some of them are elite grapplers, but some of them aren't. But it brings over the MMA crowd.
That makes sense. So he's trying to actually just grow it that way by using the UFC guys, and I'm sure it helps.
Isn't necessarily bad,
and it gives them some money as well, in between fights. So I think that's a great idea. It's pretty good. So what's next? I mean, other than sitting around fucking off on being quarantined. I mean, Jake, you're out in California, right?
Yeah, I'm in California right now, so I'm probably going to be, Gavin Newsom's going to keep us locked down probably for months.
They're going to make you get a surgical mask, like surgically put on your face.
Jake, have you been doing your civic duty and sending dick pics to the governor of California on his hotline?
I should.
You should. I've been sending my fair share to the New York governor.
He's like, this looks like Jake Shields did.
Surprisingly, the California governor doesn't have a tip hotline, but I think that's just the mayor of LA does.
So Gary, I gotta ask. So what with the stuff that was going on with your academy when everybody was closing and you were like, "Fuck this, I'm not closing yet." I know that behind the scenes, that a lot of the gyms that weren't closing, there were other reasons. It wasn't because they wanted to just be stubborn and just train through it and be assholes. I know there was like contractual reasons or whatever with the payment processors or this, that, or the other. Like when you were getting so much shit about it, did that just make you say, "Fuck it, I'm going to stick my feet in and just kind of be stubborn and stare them down," or was it? What? Because I mean, that whole thing with you and Keenan got sideways real quickly over the gym.
So I can go briefly through it. So the first thing is that I'd only criticized Keenan for shutting his gym because when he made a post about shutting his gym, in the same breath that he talked about, "Hey, I'm shutting my gym. I think it's a good idea. I think it's going to help people." In that same breath, he decided to condemn anybody that had kept their gym open, and a lot of myself and a lot of my friends included that are really good people. He basically said, "Hey, not only are you irresponsible, but you're part of the problem." And I just thought it was like a shitbag way to fucking go about doing whatever he was doing. It's like, hey, listen, you want to do a nice thing, do a nice thing, but don't tell everybody else they're a fucking asshole for not doing the thing that you're doing. So I didn't appreciate that. So that's really what my attack on Keenan was about. It had nothing to do with the fact that he really closed his gym. My main criticism was just the fact that he was condemning other people for not doing it. And that's kind of the general way that I feel about this whole thing, man. You know, like I really appreciate the freedoms that we have as Americans. And like, listen, man, if people are nervous and they feel as though they're at risk for this and this, that, and the other thing, like, listen, you do you quarantine, you fucking stay indoors, you hide to the best of your ability and do your best. But like, man, like it shouldn't impact all of us in the same way. And we should be all forced to do the same thing that you guys are doing, or even not just forced, like condemned for having opinions that we shouldn't be doing the things the way that we're doing. Like when is it ever become like something that's talked so badly about to go against, you know, the government? Like, hey, listen, dude, like, sorry, I don't like the way things are going. I don't think this is good for really anybody.
If you're afraid of car wrecks, because there's plenty of car wrecks, you have a higher chance of getting a car wreck going to the testing center than you do of getting COVID. But like, if people are afraid of driving, they don't drive, and then nobody's forcing everybody to stop driving because some people are afraid of driving.
I've gone down this road a million times, like having arguments like the one that you're trying to have right now. I don't even bother with that logic anymore. It's just like, hey, man, listen, like you live your life, you do your thing, I do mine, and like, you know, that's the way that I prefer it. And like, things are just getting so crazy right now.
Well, what they did smart was they, you know, at least what Trump did smart was he's pitting the states against each other by saying it's up to the governors. So if Texas says, you know, okay, we're going to open up everything and everybody goes back to work, and then California is still shut down. If you're in California, you don't have a job, what are you going to do? You're going to move to Texas. So if you don't want to lose,
we got plenty of space, baby.
Right. If you don't want to lose all your people, right now, then you got to open up like Texas does, because you're going to lose all your people to where the jobs are. And if California stays closed until 2022, well, guess what? Nobody's going to live there because nobody can afford to not work.
Look, man, we
won't be staying here if he stays closed too long.
Look, I mean, like me and Zach, like we were like one of the, like kind of on the other side of it in the beginning. We had a lot of people advising us that were really close to the situation, and we kind of were like, well, fuck, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? By the time it came, the event wasn't going to happen anyways. But we made a decision that at the time went against the grain of what wasn't popular. We took a lot of shit too, and it went back and forth. So Garry, I can kind of relate to what you're going to, man. When you're leading, when you're trying to do something that maybe not everybody else is doing, I mean, you're gonna catch shit. So I mean, it's you can't please everybody.
I think you guys did what you thought was right, and I don't think people feel criticizing you either. You looked at did what was right at the time.
That's fine, dude.
Yeah,
exactly.
Things should.
If we were like all, you know, fuck Garry, all promotions that don't quit, that's one thing. But we're like, we don't care what anybody else does. We're just gonna make our own decision. That's
exactly. You guys weren't condemning other people for staying open. You weren't being like, oh, screw Seth for doing shows. You guys were just like, hey, we think it's the right decision to shut.
Yeah, and like when we shut down, Jake, you've been out and you've done business with us. We're real grassroots, just kind of, we're not like a super polished Kasai or how these other well-oiled machines are running. We're just doing it for the love of the sport, man. And look, no matter what, I mean, we there was $300,000 paid out last year from our business to athletes for me and my partner at most times. There were times we walked out at a negative, at a loss. So I mean, it was just a lot of undue heat that went Gary's way for his school closing. Or everybody was just fucking mad. This virus happened.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody wanted somebody to punch, to blame the situation that everybody's in, but there's nobody to punch.
And listen, I have empathy for everybody. I get it, because this fucking sucks. Like on so many levels for so many different people. Whether it's because a loved one of yours died because of it, whether it's because you're scared and anxious that you're going to die or that somebody you love is going to die, or whether it's because whatever the case, that you're going to get sick. I get it, man. Like, it's a scary thing. Like, I get everybody. Like, I wish that like conversations were able to be had where everybody wasn't, I used to see this in the political scene quite often. When people disagreed with one another, they'd just jump right to calling somebody a Nazi. And that's really easy, to call somebody a Nazi and then have everybody be on your side, because who the fuck wants to be on the side of a Nazi, right? But it's just not really a fair way to conduct a conversation. Like when somebody disagrees with you, they disagree with you. Don't like just label them an idiot, an asshole, and this, that, and the other thing. Like, man, have the fucking conversation. If you disagree, you disagree. Like, I don't understand what the necessity is for that.
No, I agree. And like you guys, though, like you and Gordon and all you guys, y'all and Jake, y'all have these huge, these big followings on social media. So people, I mean, whether they believe it or not, they look up to you. There's that idolatry potentially going on because of just based on what you've achieved or what you do in the sport. These guys don't even know you, and then they're in your comment section basically trying to empathize, and then they feel personally attacked. I mean, it's such a weird dynamic being on that end. I mean, we're seeing it on a smaller scale from our business front.
Yeah, but there's too much social pressuring because it's coming down from, now it's way too political. This whole coronavirus thing is.
You don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's come way too political. It's almost like religion. And then you have these social pressuring that you need to conform to, and it's like it's ridiculous. It's gotten way out of hand, and now
especially
it's like.
They act like going out is to make the virus go away. The virus is still going to be here. It's like I can hide it for a month, but it's still going to be here next month. At some point, we're having to show it.
I can't get it jogging. I'm sorry. Like, you cannot get coronavirus from jogging, or you shouldn't be out jogging.
I'm good. I don't jog anyways, so I don't have to worry about it. We're all good, baby. I'm all about that pressure game when I come back. No, but no, guys. Hey, we're coming up on an hour, man. Gary, appreciate your time, man. Jake, awesome as always, man. We'll stay in touch, and hopefully we can all do some business together once this thing gets passed. And let's fucking rock and roll, man. Y'all stay safe, and
awesome.
we'll stay in touch. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.